everybody, it is April and I am in my craft room today. I had a request to do a slowed down version, a slower version. Slowed? I don't know if slowed's a word, probably not. So I had a request that I slow down my wine tote tutorial, because there were some people who were newer at sewing and quilting and they wanted something that they could follow along with. And I kind of rushed through it because I started with one project and ended up with another. So this is to fulfill that request. I found a pattern on allpeoplequilt.com. And it is similar, but not exactly the same. So it's a great pattern. It's just not, they don't sew it the way that I do, which doesn't make it wrong. This might be a preference for someone. So I started out with my quilt as you go pattern in order to come up with my wine tote pattern. So I'm going to put a link to the All People quilt pattern in the description. But if you use that pattern and you do your wine tote the way that I'm going to show you how to do the wine tote, then you'll need to make some modifications. So let me adjust the camera so that I can show you which modifications you need to make to the pattern. And then once you do that one time, you'll be good to go. Okay, so on page, let's see, you have page 1, 2, and 3, which if you follow my tutorial, you won't need these pages. Alright, so on page 5, you see the pattern for the top part of your wine tote. I have modified that to add a 1/2 inch. So what you're going to do is just make a mark with your 1/2 inch along, just move your 1/2 inch along the line and mark it. And then fill in the lines. And what I did to make sure that I filled them in evenly on either side is I folded this over and then just cut along this line. So then they're even. An example of how I did that, on this I added a 1/2 inch. So I just lined up my ruler and then moved it around and lined it up, and I just kept going in a circle, putting the 1/2 inch mark on the pattern line and so forth. And then all you have to do is, so easy, I just cut along those lines. You don't even have to make it a full circle. As long as you have the dashed lines, you're good to go. And this is not an exact science. I've had to modify where I sew depending on how wide the bottle open, the open part of my wine tote is. So it just depends on how you sew the different pieces. It'll be different every time. All right. So that's that. And then the wider part of the bottle, I added 3/4 of an inch. And then I cut to the outside of the 3/4 of an inch. So just to make it a little bit wider. And then the bottom is the same. Now, The reason I did all this was, this is my pattern from the Quilt As You Go. So now when I place it here, the width is approximately the same. And that's what I was going for. Because when you don't add that and you just use the All People Quilt pattern, what happens is you get a skinny bottle tote that a bottle of wine won't fit in, but you can hold your water bottle. So I had to modify in order to get the bigger wine tote that a bottle of wine will fit in nicely. All right. And then, so just like this one has the tape, you line up on the dotted line. I'm going to cut right on the dotted line on this one so we can line up the dotted lines. And actually, on this instance, I'm going to match the dotted line, but I'm going to match the edges since I've added that extra on the edge. And I really like putting this on contact paper, and this is a little higher, which is fine. That's not a big deal. But putting it on contact paper allows me to just press it down on my fabric and my batting and cut it out that way. So those are the modifications that you have to make in order to do the wine bottle that I am going to show you if you want a pattern. If you have a Quilt As You Go kit for wine bottles, you can just use the pattern that's on the batting in that kit. Once you have cut out your pattern, and I taped it on both sides, then what you'll want to do is use that pattern to cut out your batting. And what I did is I put the top of my pattern on the fold of my batting, and then you get a whole long piece. All right, then I did the same thing with my material that's going to be on the inside. So I put this on the fold, and there you go. I've got my whole inside piece of material. I also cut out the batting with the circle, and then I need to pin this on my material. This is going to be on the outside. Now, this material is a directional material. So if I were to cut out on the fold, my wine glasses on one side would be upside down, and on the other side they would be right side up. So instead of cutting on the fold, I just am cutting two pieces so that this side and this side are facing the same. So this side is, the wine glasses on this side are facing the same as the wine glasses on this side, and then I'll just put a small seam at the top. All right. And you can use this pattern over and over and over again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have two pieces for the outside, for the exterior. So I'm going to lay them right sides together. And I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam right here. So now I have this nice long piece, and when I finish it, these wine glasses will be facing upwards. Alright, so I'm going to finger press this seam. Just kind of use your nails and you can finger press it and it will be fine. Alright, so I'm going to lay this out and I'm going to back you up a little bit so you can see the whole thing. Alright, so actually I'm going to put that right side up. Then I'm going to put the inside lining right side down. And it is a little bit longer because I did those seams. So what I'm going to do, actually I'm going to cut it on the fold. And then I'll quickly do a 1/4 inch seam on this so then they'll be the same length. Alright, so I'm going to do right sides together and I'll finger press my seam. And then I will, no, back. Come on, scoot. I will line these up on the seam. Alright, and then I've got one more piece, and this is going to be my batting. And my batting is going to have the same issue. So now I've got the 3 layers. I have my first layer, which is right side up, second layer right side down, and then my batting. I'm going to sew along both sides, but leave the ends open so that I can turn it right side out. You may want to pin. I am not a big pinner. I just don't. Alright, so I'm going to hold it, then I'm going to back up. And I'm sewing a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, I'm just going to adjust everything so it all lines up because I don't have the clips on it. And like I can put a clip here and that'll help me keep it lined up. Try to open all the seams. All right. And you can see my batting is moving, and that's okay. Now I'm going to slow it down because I want to be more cautious in the corners. And since my batting shifted a little bit, I'm going to go in a little more. If you pin your batting, you will not have that issue. Or clip it. I'm just going to make sure that everything is lined up so that I don't have any gaps. Now, this material pretty well lines up, so I'm going to go to about a 1/4 inch, and I'm going to do this, make sure sure. Maybe I can go a little bit further, maybe one stitch further. Now, make sure I got everything in there, and I did. So now, I'll just line these up. And speed her up. Alright, so now I've got the one side. So what I want to do is I want to open it up and make sure that everything was caught. Because I don't pin, I have to be more concerned about that. If you were to put pins in it, you probably wouldn't be that worried about it. But it's all there. So I'm going to fold it back over. And then I'm going to do the other side. And there we have the initial sewing. I'm going to trim the corners just a little bit because that's where we have to push out a little. But these aren't as stark as like the corners are on a blanket. So just take a little bit off, and hopefully the cat doesn't knock your arm so that you take way more off than you should. Alright, and then I've got some extra batting on the bottom. And I am going to go ahead and just hand trim that. Not all the way, just get rid of that little bitty bit that we had. Okay, so now I want to turn this right side out. So I'm going to open it up here, and I'm going to, just like turning a shirt right side out. Kitty, you're not helping me. No, you're not. I'm going to pull and stuff some more of that in there. And it's kind of skinny, but it's not as bad as you would think. You just find some material to pull that's going to give you a little more of the rest of it. Okay. So then we're going to reach up here and we're going to push out our corners. We're going to reach out on the other side, push out our corners. There we go. Okay. Then we're going to flatten it because what we're going to do... Oop, I didn't get that corner. We're going to top stitch. Let's see. There we go. Okay, looks good. Now let's do some top stitching. So what we want to do is we want to top stitch, but we are going to sew seams here when we put it together. So all I want to top stitch is along where the handle is going to be. So I just need to start here and top stitch and do the other side. And that just keeps these seams nice and flat. So I'm going to start And again, this is going to be a 1/4 inch seam. Got it pretty slow because, sorry, keep hitting the camera, because I don't want to mess this seam up. Especially now because this is on the outside. Okay. So I'm just going to go along the edge. Of the handle. Now I'm going to slow down. Here we're going to slow down because there's a bulk of material where all the seams come together. Okay, and we don't even need to go all the way to the end because we're going to put right sides together and we're going to sew there. So now we need to do the other side. Alright, so now we've got this nice flat seam and it just looks very finished. Alright, so I have my free motion quilting foot on, and it wasn't too hard to change. I need to put it in the right setting, so it's 0.4 on this particular machine, and then I need to lower the feed dogs, because whereas the feed dogs grab and feed your material, you don't want it to be fed, you want to be able to move it around any way you like. So I'm just going to use a loopy meander, which is a very easy stitch. I'm not going to make it real tight. And what you have to do is adjust your foot pressure. I do pedal to the metal. Then you move the material in such a way that the stitch length is right. So you want it to be on the right setting as far as your speed. So let me back out a little here and kind of go this way. So I'm putting my speed in the middle for right now, and I'm going to hold on to my needle. I'm going to do needle up, needle down. That pulls up my bobbin thread. This is more for when you're doing something where you don't want to see anything on the other side. The other side happens to be the inside of our project, so it's not that big a deal. Alright, so I'm going to okay, and I need to slow my speed down so that my stitches aren't quite so long based on the pressure of my foot. And I need my gloves on. These gloves give me grip. I just have no grip on the material. Some people will do fine without them. I just don't. Okay, so I'll worry about picking that out later. Alright, ready? Here we go. Okay. And that is it. Right here, my stitch length is a little longer than I would want it to be. So I was going too fast. Down here, it's a little shorter than I would want it to be, and I was going too slow. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we are going to sew this together here and here. Now this seam is going to be pretty thick, but that's okay. That way we don't have raw insides. Alright, so this is all lined up. So this, like I said, is going to be pretty thick. I'm going to put it on a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm going to go pretty, I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll see. And then back stitch. So we're going to turn this right side out. So we are to the bottom of our wine tote. Now I've cut these bottom pieces out using the bigger circle. I'm going to try something. I cut the material out using the bigger circle. I cut the batting out using the smaller circle. The reason that I did this is because it gets a little cumbersome when you have the batting and the both sides of material when you're trying to install it in the bottom of your wine tote. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew along the edge of the batting so that when I go to attach the bottom, there won't be as much bulk around the edge. So we'll just see how that goes. Alright, so what I'm going to do is, this is a 1/4 inch, but I'm going to feel about where my batting is, and I'm going to drop my needle. And then I am going to slowly sew in a circle. And sometimes it cooperates and sometimes it doesn't. Okay. Here we have the wine tote bottom. And it's kind of puffy, so I'm going to sew it this way to use that to my advantage. So we need to turn our wine tote right side in. And then we attach like this. Now the inside of the tote will have raw edges. That's I can't get around that. I probably could, but I'm not willing to put forth the effort. It's the bottom of the tote, so hopefully there won't be that many people looking at it. Okay, so, and this is where it gets tedious, especially when you have a cat that's trying to rub her head against your hand. So now I clip on this part because, like I said, it just gets very tedious. And I don't know if there's an easier way to do this or not. I think when you're putting the bottom of a tote in, it's going to be tedious no matter what you do. Alright. I'm looking for the smaller clips. And you just work it around. You're going to have a little gathering, and that's okay. The smaller clips are always at the top when you don't want them. Okay, so this is how it's going to look, and what we're going to do is we're going to sew along here. And yes, it's as awful as you think. So I'm going to take the first clip out. Now I've got these really thick seams, so I'm going to open it as much as I can. And I'm going to put this here. And essentially you're just going to slowly work your way around, and you have to work not to get your bag messed up. Alright, so I'm going to go forward and then I'm going to go back. I'm going to go forward. I'm going to unclip here. I'm going to make sure everything is lined up because I don't want to miss any of the bag. So I'm just going to go right along the inside of the seam that I already sewed. Okay, I want to get my clip. Make sure you move your bag around. And essentially it just takes patience, I think, is the main thing. I'm going to lift this foot up. I got a little gathering here, that's okay. Okay, I'm going to remove this. I'm going to adjust everything. The thing is, the bottom of the bag isn't that big, and then I've got this seam that I want to make as flat as I can get it. Okay, I'm going to adjust because we're on the seam part, so I want the seam to be along that edge. Make sure as much of my bottom is in there because I don't want to miss the edge of my tote that I've already worked so hard on. Straighten it out, remove the clip. And if I can get this as straight as I can. Remove the clip, adjust the bag, and we're almost done. Okay, I'm going to. So I want this to be flat. And like I said, I'm just about to the beginning. And I want to backstitch. So if you look, it's not beautiful, but you know, it is the bottom of the bag. So let's turn this right side out. Cross your fingers. We're going to push it out, push it out, push it out. And we have a wine tote. Yay! And the wine fits. That is always a good thing. And a cat. Okay, so wine tote is done. Bottom is done. And hopefully I did it slowly enough that you guys were able to keep up and understand exactly what it was I was doing. It's not hard. The worst part, I think, is the bottom, but with time, you'll be whipping them out just like that. Thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate you watching me. I know that you have lots and lots of options when it comes to YouTube. I have a crazy cat. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe. If you want to be notified when I load new videos, then click the bell when you subscribe. Share it with your friends and go out there and make some wine totes.